I don't know, I just think it means something, so I always throw it up here again. You've heard it, I'm going to throw it, this will be a brief, short little statement. You've all seen this. This is Elder Holland, 1999. He said this so long ago. But it's this thought, whatever you're doing in life, if you wonder if it's the right thing, if you felt inspired, like your decision in life are inspired, you do it because you feel like it's the right thing to do, this is what he says to you. This is in context. You have to read the whole thing so you understand what his context is. But he says this. With any major decision, there are cautions and considerations to make. But once there's been illumination, beware the temptation to retreat from a good thing. You know what he's saying? You might start to wonder and have doubts. He says if you have been illuminated, you can define for yourself what that illumination is. But once you've been illuminated, beware the temptation to retreat from it. If it was right when you prayed about it and trusted it and lived for it, it is right now. Don't give up when the pressure mounts. Certainly don't give in to that being who has bent on your destruction, on the destruction of your happiness. Face your doubts, master your fears, cast not away therefore your confidence, stay the course, and see the beauty of life unfold before you. That's it. That's the thought this guy has for you. You should stick with the things that you feel like are right or good, and not start to question yourself. Which could apply to many different things in our lives, you know? Lots of things. And if you're bored on Saturday and have nothing to do, you can turn the TV on and watch some TV for 4 hours. Or 6. If you're a sister in the room, you might find yourself down at the church building or at home, I guess, right? You can watch that from home too. All righty. What do you want to say about things? Anything you guys want to bring up before I start cranking away on this stuff? Okay, let us crank. Remember last time we talked about unsupervised and supervised? And I left you hanging here. I said this is what we did for Willow. And that was the goal, was to see what we can come up with as far as being able to accurately separate and identify species, and we used this very approach to do it. We thought we will try a number of different types of approaches in classification to see if one makes a difference for most accurately identifying Willow. Large-scale aerial photos exhibit high-resolution detail. However, we have problems with that if you have too many pixels. So how do you deal with that? How would you deal with too many pixels? Or why is it even an issue? You kind of did this. You guys used a image for classification, and it was pretty high resolution data. Any issues with that? What's it on? Takes a long time to do it. Spend all day processing if you want to do it that way. That's a con. Let's hear some pros and cons. Like 3 of each.
Pros, you get lots of resolution.
You get a lot of detail. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to see the details of your site, if plan community structure at the species level matters to you, that'd be a wise thing to do for resolution. Good.
Resolution can also be a con, though. I can get rid of examples. You have so many pixels per plant that there can be some variability in those pixels.
High variability means a larger range of possible digital numbers and the values that fall within those pixels. Totally true. That's exactly what I would say too. That's two cons, 1 pro. You gotta get 3 of 3. Pros and cons of really high resolution imagery. Bench. You can eat up a hard drive in no time with those, right? You start gathering a lot of data like that. Excellent point, because less space and 3 cons, 1 pro.
One pro would be you have the ability to reduce so it gives you more options.
You have the option, right? You do. You have the option to degrade. If you want to degrade, you can. And that's often people do. They'll degrade their images so they're a little less lower resolution, so you don't have that issue with such large digital numbers. Good pro. 2 pros.
I think kind of along that, if you wanted to maybe change your analysis, maybe instead of just I don't know how much you play with those, maybe looking at another plant, you could maybe look at flowers on that plant. You could maybe use that data for other things besides what your group was going to for.
Again, having more data, right? That's a great point. You want to look at multiple different aspects of things. Knowing those details can come real handy now or later. Excellent. Third one. Daniel, do you have another one?
I was just going to say that this is the number of things you can do with the data once you have it.
Perfect. Daniel, do you
I
have
have
another
a question. Like, if, I don't know like how prominent it is, like the great movies and stuff, but why do like people with so much research and so much money like on high quality cameras that get this conferences, or they're just going to be great?
Totally valid point. I think it's a valid point. We do put a lot of money. Sometimes I think, even with myself, I'll tell you what, you're picking out drones or whatever, you're like, dude, that thing is freaking sweet. And so we go after this just so dang cool. That Inspire guy you saw flying, so cool. And we put 13,000. You're like, did I need to do that or not? And there's debate. The camera on that one is not that much different than the camera on that spot on the Phantom Forest. You're like, shoot, that was more than $10,000 increase for what? But the fact is that thing's got a payload. So the other part was we hauled these other cameras and this LiDAR from out. So you have to kind of think about it. But you're right, as far as sometimes what you're actually gaining, and I bet if you're drawing a curve out of how much you're paying and what you're gaining from that, it starts to level off pretty quick. Libby first, then Tom. I thought your hand was up. It's not, just make
Her
something
hand's
up.
up.
Just make something up.
Oh. There's nothing.
Well, I was just gonna say, if, even on your phone, if you have a really good camera, you can take pictures from farther away and still have a lot of detail. So if you have a really high quality resolution camera on your drone, you can take pictures from higher up, take larger extents, but still have detail that you
Yeah, excellent. And one thought with that too is that you might use it for different things, spectral, temporal. If you want to do some temporal analysis, you know what I'm saying? If you want to go back out next week and go look at Rock Canyon again, you could. You got to get on camera where you've got good high quality imagery, and you go back out the camera that's got the same ability. At least you've got some consistency. You can have a crappy camera and get crappy pictures all along too. Again, just thinking that through. I think that's a really good point.
I was going to say, like, though, you can always make your image coarser, right? We talked about overviews
Yeah.
on our raster assignment this week. So, but you can't make it finer. So if you make it fine and then you can make it worse, you can use that to analyze, but you can't take it worse and make it finer.
Exactly. And sometimes people do. You can take an image that's got 5 meter pixel resolution. You can re-sample it to 1 meter if you want. What are you doing? You're just making up data. It's just so it overlays well with another image, just so you've got the same pixel size. If that was your goal, but you're not increasing your resolution. You are, but you're not increasing the quality of your information. You're probably actually confusing the outcome even more. Is it time? Still not.
I'll keep my head down.
You keep waving around. Look at you.
I'm
Thanks.
ready.
I didn't say anything.
Ask everyone around me. I don't.
You're so funny. Okay, so here's this pixel thing. And you know I'll keep doing it just because I like to harass you. Single pixels in play and crank can be confused with the other things, right? And again, shadow, I can't emphasize enough shadow. At some point, where does that happen when you start losing it into a shadow that is going to not give you your outcomes? If you got a plant that's round like this, but over here you've got this shading effect going on, so it kind of gives a little crescent part to it. And we'll take that into consideration.
With shadow, if you're like wanting to quantify like acreage you plant or something, and maybe some plants in shadow, how do you write that out like in your report? You just be like, there's this much uncertainty because there's 18% shadow, or?
You do your best to minimize shadow by doing it the right time of day, so you can minimize that effect, but you're not going to get all of it. So you always have, so what you can do is you can state, do the shadow, this is our percent shadow, and we feel like there's a certain percentage that was lost from the plant. So in reality, you can increase it, or what you can do is do it, and you could run an accuracy assessment, which we'll talk about later, and see how accurate your information is compared to the values you might get in the field for cover. from everything I've seen so far, actually, I think Remote Sensing actually gives you a better result. We did Matt Madsen for his PhD, one chapter was on, I didn't show you this in class, have I? I should show you this paper he did. He took juniper trees and did a cover classification and a density measurement on it. They did the exact same thing for ground-based information using the DWR's data from the raised trend plots. And he ran this analysis, did a comparison, and it all came out significantly indifferent. There was no significant difference between their measurements and our measurements. But in some cases, there were a few images where there was a difference. We actually looked at them, we had a higher cover value than they did. We think they were missing out, we think they were blowing it. Like, we looked at their data, like, that data's not right. We think their data is incorrect, not ours. And there probably was a small discrepancy, but from field-based measurements to remote sensing, I think you gave it a tighter fit. But you are going to have to account for some loss that's due to things like that. It's a legit question. But I'll show you something with the drone right here just a second that will maybe help understand a little better what you can do.
So I was going to ask, do people ever, like, they'll take one image when it's not a cloud in the sky, and then they'll go back when it's overcast, do the same image, and then, like you were just explaining, do a comparison to see if one's more accurate? Like, if the vegetation reflects the sunlight, it might throw it off more than if it was overcast. Do people do that?
I would think that you can find a whole number of approaches to being as careful as possible. And I think that's a great idea. You can totally do that. But when the shadowing effect has been minimized, you can really see that outside edge. That's one approach we're doing. Lately, I think what is being done more frequently, though, is what's called OBIA, and we're not there yet. But you're going to do some OBIA, which is object-based image analysis. And that takes into consideration shape of features. And if you've got trees that typically are roundish, but all of a sudden you've got them being cut off, you can actually account for some of that due to shape. So there are metrics that can be used for improving that accuracy that might not be just a typical spectral response. But even then, you still can do what you're saying. You can go during a cloudy day, or so you don't have such bright contrast and such extreme shadow effects, and do that. Get that delineation. It's an interesting thought. So, because once you have that, if you could like pick out that tree, just its area, instead of really going for the best spectral response, you're just trying to get a pixel, whether it is that or not. You could actually have that be a mask. Take out your layer, overlay it with the next image, and then just get rid of everything else that's not tree, and then do your spectral stuff on it. It's an interesting thought. All right. This was the place. That's where we were, right down here. That's Western Juniper we were working on. You know what Western Juniper is?
What state is it?
Juniperus. That's Rocky Mountain Juniper, so close. That's the state of Oregon. What was the other juniper you might want to say? Isaac, what is it? It's not Juniper scapularum. It is?
I don't know the actual names. I know lots of types of juniper, but I don't know any of the proper
It's
names.
Western.
We got shaggy bark juniper and alligator bark juniper.
Yeah, wrong direction. You're going south.
Yeah, that's where I'm
That's
from.
good though. I'm impressed. That's awesome. Who else is from the Northwest? Idaho, Oregon. If you're from Oregon, maybe.
It's been like 5 years since I took Plant ID. Oh.
You never learned this in Plant ID, but if you're from that area, the whole northern belt of Oregon, I mean, the whole northern section of all that juniper, it's not occidental. Whoops, it's not osteosperma, and it's not scapularum, and it's not monosperma.
Occidentalis.
That is exactly it, dude.
Smart, man.
It's occidentalis. All this been here is this whole state right here, this much of it. There's way more juniper than there is Doug fir, or Sitka spruce, or hemlock in the state of Oregon. It pales. The trees are not as big. These are what you're using to build houses, not these. But the state is dominated by occidentalis. Anywho, there we go. We got color infrared. Pixel size is 7 centimeters. This is back when we had to actually scan them. We took these contact prints they sent us in the mail, like a box of pictures. We scanned them, 600 DPI.
Do you have pictures of these trees?
Of the juniper? I got lots of pictures of those juniper trees. Lots. But you mean like just a photographic one?
Yeah,
Well, this- I
I
should.
don't know what they look like compared to the ones that I'm familiar with.
Oh, it looks the same.
They look the
You
same?
can't quite. They're a little more triangular. They're a little more triangular. Ooh, fall on my back. A little more triangular, but not much. And the funny thing is, this whole discussion is not even about juniper, it's about willow, but since we're going there. I started that, I better carry this out. But they're all over that area. That's, oh, I just had a nice picture there. That last picture was fine. These guys are in the hillside. Berries about the same size. That right there, a little more deltoid shade when they're younger, when they get older, not so much. When they start to get high in competition, what happens to trees, to juniper when they get really competitive? Like in a phase 3 woodland, you know what happens to them?
Wildfire.
You get a wildfire, maybe, once you start. And actually, that's not always the case. I'll show you later some pictures of juniper. What happens when they get big? They compete with each other and the understory intercamping plants. What happens to wildfire when you start competing with everything on the ground? I have a whole chapter of a PhD on this very subject, so we can submit it as a classical topics. You know what happens? The intercanopy of a juniper system that's in phase 3. Your sagebrush is pretty much out. Artemisia tridentata is the first thing to go. It just cannot deal with the competition. Because if you look at the soil profile, the matrix, soil matrix, from the surface down, you can look for the roots. And there are fine roots right near the surface that can be millimeter, 3 millimeters. You go down a little bit deeper, you're 5 to 10 meter class with a bunch of also fibrous roots from juniper. Below that, you start getting nice little roots like this that are just all over the place. They're intertwined. And here's a juniper tree. They'll grow, their root mass will go out 1.5 to 2 times their height away from the tree, so they're spreading out. They're competing with everything else that's putting roots in that same zone, which is going to be the other trees. So when you're looking at these trees, it's roots going everywhere. And the further down you go, they start getting these big cables that are sending roots out that are just branching out into the soil. So you can't dig a hole in a phase 3 woodland of juniper without hitting roots the whole way down until you hit rock that you can't hardly even get through anymore.
Do they chain them? In, like,
They chain
northern
those?
areas? You know what I'm talking about? Where
I
they
know
put the-
exactly what you're talking about. I'm going to tell you, don't forget that question. Just hang on that question for dear life. But if there's just one last thought, and we're going to go there. So these root masses, they compete with everything. Sagebrush and the entire water content cannot deal with this, so they'll die off. You'll see skeletons like crazy in a phase 2 woodland. Into phase 3, and those guys are gone. They're gone. Persia tridentata will persist a little bit longer. You all feel good about Persia tridentata, what that is? Somebody say it. And a little bitterbrush, that one hangs out a little bit longer. You can tell if you grab the stems of a dead plant and rip it in half. I believe it's Persia tridentata does not have striations in the bark. Inside the wood, not in the bark, inside the wood, there'll be like these little patterns of striations. Persia tridentata does not have it, but Artemisia tridentata, big sagebrush, does have it. So you can see which plant it is that's dead, because otherwise it looks a lot of light as a dead plant. Grasses are not far behind. Forbs often take a hit. So in phase 3, it's now pretty much bare ground, high erosion rates, with scattering of trees. Unless conditions are just right, it's really hard to light those on fire. So now lightning strikes, you may or may not get a fire that's going to go. And if it is, if one goes, if you actually get a fire that goes and gets into a crown, it always has to burn in a crown fire form to go through a juniper system like that in phase 3, and it just rips everything out. It'll fill all of it. So it's not, these are not the desired conditions really for massive landscapes to have this going on. So they do chain them here. If you want to, go watch a chaining event. And if you never, who in here has never seen chaining before? Do you know what I'm saying about
I've seen
chaining?
it, I've just seen it afterward.
Do you know what that is? Let me show you just fast what chaining is. You can chain these trees. This is going to be really fast. Chaining.
There's a really good video. Oh, wait,
Oh, there's some great ones. This is Hamlin Valley. We've got these two great big D9 tractors, and there's a chain that goes right here behind them. These are a bolt. It's an anchored chain from a ship, and they tie on right back here in the corner. There's your chain. They tie on these big railroad track chunks, and they call it an Ely chain, and they drag them through these places. So that's chaining. There's also bull hogging. Bull hogging where they grind trees up. Turns out, Utah, we'll do green chaining and green bull hogging all the time without even thinking twice about it. We do it all the time. In Oregon, you cannot. They do cuts. They will go cut trees, but they feel like chaining green material is too hazardous. It's just
Hazardous
too
in
much.
what way?
You're just slaying trees and you're wrecking the environment. So they just don't like
It's
it.
really good habitat for wilderness.
That's an argument. You need to go to Oregon and go work
I have to
with
take
that
it to Arizona to
organization.
show them what's up.
So after a fire, they'll do post-fire chaining. That's very common throughout the West. But green chaining, not so common. Or bull hogging. Okay, back to Willow. This is all back to Willow. Image processing, we did a supervised and unsupervised classification technique. Unsupervised the original image. We resampled a 0.3 meter pixel size. We wanted to see that same thing. Can we degrade it? We tried degrading these images. And then I asked you this one question. Degrading. What else can you do? If you have this high variability in pixels within a canopy of a tree or willow, for example, what do you do with them? Just like the second thing we just gave you, I just showed you. I beat you to it. I beat you. I got rid of it before you had a chance to see it. Use a convolution filter. You were on it, dude. You were paying attention. The convolution filter reduces the spatial frequency. They have what are called high-pass filters and low-pass filters. And these will then, for each pixel, will do some kind of an equation, a calculation to it. In this case, a convolution filtering process where it looks at the pixels around it in a window. These are windows. A 3x3 window, you can imagine 3 pixels by 3 pixels. That's the size of the window with your pixel right in the middle, right? So you got just one pixel all the way around it. It's using those pixels around it to give a new value to the center pixel. Then it shifts over to the next pixel. It does the same thing. Next pixel does the same thing. If you do that by hand, can you imagine sitting by hand going through and writing this down in the equation? Okay, I'll go that pixel, and okay, these numbers here, we'll calculate it up in a spreadsheet. You'd be there for the rest of your life doing that. These computers are so awesome because it'll do your whole image in 4.7 seconds. It blows my mind. It's a mind-blowing moment. So then you got 7x7 pixels with your pixel in the middle. It's being that's the one that's going to be calculated based on 7x7 window. Does that make sense what I'm saying? All good with that? So every pixel is being adjusted based on all these pixels around it. So it blurs everything. It's just blurring. It's homogenizing the values of your pixels.
How does that work? Did you get to the edge of an object that like half would be something else,
Yep.
half would be like, how does it?
Great point. That's a great point. And for that reason, sometimes it's best when you get to those edges, maybe you could clip out some of your outside edge. But you're only talking about, a couple 3 pixels on the edge that are going to be affected by this. And these images I'll show you here in a second. There are thousands of pixels going this way, thousands of pixels going that way. It's a grid of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of pixels. So your outside edge could potentially be affected by that, but the amount of area that's being influenced by it is really almost minimal. It's almost minuscule. Insignificant effect on the overall outcome of the data. But if you were dealing with really very, very small areas or really coarse resolution data, then that's something to be thinking about. It's a really good point. It's a really good point. We actually felt like once wasn't enough, so we did the whole thing of filtering with the 7x7 window, and then we did it again. We wanted to homogenize those pixels down so there wasn't so much variability in each of the canopies. And then we did this collection of supervised classification signature files. We went out and we got these. There's what's called a region growing tool, and then there's the actual digitizing, where you go out and find a tree and click, or a willow, we just digitize around that willow and found another one. And we got in the field, we knew which ones were gyres and booths and yellow willow. We knew which ones were which. So we on the image said, right there, we know that's a Salix lutea, we know that's Beviana, or Boothii. So we digitized those, and bare ground and everything else. So we feel like we had a pretty good assessment. And then we did color and color infrared. This was all, we did this in like about a week. We did all this processing less than a week. It was really easy to do. So here are all these options you've got. Here's your aerial photograph, and you subset it down. You apply these, you can apply these unsupervised and supervised classification techniques, like signatures of polygon versus a seed method. The seed method, you're basically just clicking on a center point of a pixel, and then it finds all the pixels around it that are somewhat similar. That's what it's doing. So you're not digitizing, you're saying that pixel for sure, and get everything around it that seems relatively close to it. So you just click on pixels here and there across the board, across your image, and it finds the pixels that are closely associated to it. We found that to be less effective than actually digitizing polygons. We applied 7x7 twice, and that we believe gave us our best information. This is Salix lutea, that's yellow willow. Here's Salix boothii, and over here, that picture is all purple anyway, you can't really tell, but this over here is Gyriana. So here are the original images there. The guy flew over on a nice sunny day about 1 o'clock. We timed it, we told him right now, so we got out there, and actually one of the photographs, the guy I'm with is laying on the ground, sprawled out so he could see himself in the picture being a goof. That right there, Gyre's willow. And we did this for the entire riparian system. So here is the original image. That's a 3x3 low-pass convolution filter. So it's taking its algorithm, all the pixels around it, and it's taking that center point and blurring it. So here's some more of a blurring effect. Here's 7x7 window. And then this is with it applied twice. That convolution filter applied 2 times. So you're not losing resolution like you would have degraded. That's degrading to 0.3, from 7 centimeters to 30 centimeters. You degrade this, that's what it does. And that's why I want to emphasize that appearance versus that appearance. You can see what degrading alone would do. You may want to degrade and then apply a convolution filter. That might be more effective. But we thought all that would do is just create this blockiness. This way we can still differentiate what's out there and not get the blockiness effect. So that picture I was just showing you, that little willow, is that one right there. Right, it's this one plant. You're seeing that those pictures were this right there. Well, that's the entire riparian system. So then we threw this into it. Unsupervised classification, here's no filter, and here's our 7x7 filter applied twice. And that those little dots is what happens when you don't filter it. You get this salt pepper effect, where it gets confused on pixels. And I'm sure you saw that when you did your drone image analysis. You get this pixelation like crazy. It's just not quite sure what those pixels belong to. So it starts to do this. In which case you can do this, like I was saying, you can do a clump and a sieve. You can sieve out the pixels that are not what you think they should belong to. I'm pretty sure these pixels right there, they're yellow. That really is not yellow willow. I'm almost sure they're not. So you say, well, everything that's got 8 pixels together or less clump them together so they're all bound together, and then filter, get rid of them. You sieve them out, and that would clean a lot of that up. Here it is with a supervised classification. That's using a seed method, this polygon method. In this case, we also had some aspen in there. We threw an aspen, which we were not able to pick up hardly at all, not at all with an unsupervised classification. But we nailed it with the supervised, and those really are accurate. There's a little bit of green. These right here are not aspen. That's not an aspen tree. That up there, I think there was one aspen, that's not one. This is one, that's one. And so it was able to grab those trees as well. Here it is degraded. That is a supervised degraded, and what it is, just it made everything just more rounded off, but it did not improve accuracy. And for infrared, here's color supervised, here's infrared. On infrared, we lost accuracy in our data. We did not feel like those were, it was not helping at all. Infrared did not improve our ability to classify species. So then we did that test. We did a comparison of all these, and these right here show the percentage of cover for each of the different groups, the black being shadow, and here's infrared. Pretty high in shadow. It got this red, which is Gyraena, really high classification in that, which was overestimating. It way overestimated this one. This degraded one, it just way overestimated on Boothii. And it did, and shadow, way too much shadow when you degraded it. Did not work out right. This was our best right here, supervised polygon method, and we felt like it captured things in the best way possible. We then extended this on to further south and further north in the riparian area to see if we could continue to classify it out. Felt really good about this. I put that in the journal article that we wrote and submitted. You know what they said? You're all going to be doing this, writing articles. They'll go in for submission to a journal. Guess what they told me when I did this? Right, here's our original area is this box. There's the extended area. And I put this on and I said, look at that. Nails it. It nails it outside the area. It's just great. You know, guess what they told me? What did they tell me?
I said it's not square.
That's not square. Your bosses are not square. No, they didn't. They could have said that, but they didn't say that. You know what they said? Doesn't matter, get it out of there. You know why? They don't want, in our research, they don't want you extrapolating. I had no data, I didn't collect any of the data out here. I had no ground truth information for building this. I just applied it and said, look what it does. They said, doesn't matter. Delete it from the article or we will not publish. So I had to take that picture right back out of it again, and all the stuff we had said about this, had to delete it off the manuscript, and then they said, perfect, we'll take it.
Couldn't you have gone out and ground truth that to then say, we've done this and that, you know, without going on the ground, and then we've done it afterward with going on the ground and compared the two to show that this is a valid method? Like to prove
I think that's what we did.
making it easier by using drones. You say,
Yeah.
well, in a pinch, you can use the drone without ground truthing to save time and money.
So what you could do is what you just said. You could say in the discussion section, this approach could be applied to further understand or measure the distribution, such as in figure this one. But the problem is, in our methods, we said we also extrapolated beyond the area, and we did this technique and came up with these percentages on areas outside of it. We said no.
But I'm saying, couldn't you go after the fact and
Yeah. And why not? Why would
and I'm saying because I mean, if in a lot of work, you probably wouldn't need any kind of, the accuracy wouldn't matter that much. You'd want to get an idea for certain management ideas and stuff. So I mean, wouldn't it be beneficial to know if you can do it without the ground truthing?
Yeah, and that's why we did it.
And know what level of accuracy you're getting.
Totally agree. That's why we did it. And if we had done it where we really went out and did a lot of ground truthing, I still felt good about it. I know what those species are. I did not include any of the spectral characteristics in the classification itself from up here. I just applied what we already had from here to this. But I didn't go out and do any kind of new digitizing of those, which kind of leads to why they had a concern with this. And the concern is that there could be variability, and there could also be other species that show up eventually, and you're not taking that consideration. You don't even have any data on that at all. So that's the problem of interpolation versus extrapolation. When you extrapolate, you don't always know what's out there because you didn't sample in that world. You didn't measure in that, And so because of that, they will toss it. And I think had I gone down and actually done a lot of measurements, said we know exactly there's the same species, there's nothing else in there, which I thought we did, they still said no. Because of the data itself was not being built on the information that was out beyond that area. So to say the discussion, yeah, this will have to be applied, here's an image of it where it was done, they need to take it out, but we just deleted the whole thing out. So less recommended is working the entire image. What we did is you saw this, we clipped it down, because you look up here, those are juniper trees scattered around the hill. That's aspen. These right here are some isolated juniper, western juniper. They said that we don't, that just confuses it. If you include these guys in the picture, they're a totally different species, not what you're interested in. All the sagebrush, you're not interested in that. It just creates confusion in your pixels. It's not meaningful. So we did a clip. We took just the area of just the stuff we were looking at and minimized the effect of anything else out there, except for a little bit of bare ground that's in between some of these plants, or the water, which is coming down the creek right through here. It's a pretty decent little riparian zone going through Big Skull Creek in eastern Oregon by Steens Mountain. We found that the filters, depends which ones. High pass were not as effective. Medium majority filters were not as effective as low pass, and in particular, convolution filter. That was our best one. Degrading to larger pixel size did not work. Unsupervised classification was not as effective. Region growing, not having enough signatures. If you do not get the variability, that is not helpful. Oh, and infrared. Infrared was inferior to color for this type of an approach. Recommended is subset your area, use a convolution filter, you apply it twice, you do supervised classification, and you use it by digitizing your features and doing a whole bunch of those and fine-tuning your signatures. We took half a semester to do this thing, not for the class. It was like a class project you're doing. We just did this, wrote it up, and it got published. So please publish your stuff. Here's another approach. This was an area down in Ely. We got some funding a couple of years ago to go measure the veg there. And they want to see if we can use these drones for rangeland monitoring, do the same kind of stuff. If we can fly over a bunch of sagebrush like this, and then quantify cover and total, you can. We didn't do it for this one, but biomass potentially, heights of the plants, these are all stuff you could potentially throw into it. Assess the impact of invasive species, which we also are looking to see if we can quantify how much cheatgrass is moved in, annual versus perennial plants. To develop methods that provide rapid cost effectiveness, accurate and robust results, that's what they want. So you can fly a drone versus going and hiring a crew to spend all summer. You can go out there and buzz them. That was what they were hoping for. So we flew. This picture right there, our drone was about 30 feet off the ground. We were just right above those planes. And we had traffic lines. Our crew from Jackson Hole, Wyoming, they have people out there and they were measuring the exact same thing at each of these points. So we could come up with their measure of cover compared to our measure of cover by the exact same points, but also by doing a classification around the plants themselves, seeing if our overall assessment was comparable to their line segment. Here's our classification. That was just a real fast, supervised. Got that pixelation, but a lot of that is duff. A lot of that is dead material. It's the litter and bare ground. It actually picked it up quite well. And then the darker yellow is annual plants, and then a bunch of perennial plants. And it's not perfect, but it's really close to what their numbers are very similar to our numbers when doing this. Very, very close. This was Ammon Boswell's master's thesis. We used a company out of Salt Lake. I'm still tempted to take you there. It's called Air Graphics. They flew this place for us. We also used Valley Air. Valley Air is a company out of Idaho that just has little Cessnas. They just fly over and get you more coarse resolution data. It's not nearly as high quality. It's not geo-rectified information like you get from Air Graphics. These guys charge us $30,000. These guys charge about $6,000 or $5,000 to do this work. You pay a ton more to get Air Graphics data than Valley Air. So same idea. We said, let's try this. Let's do a filtering process again. Let's try Valley Air and Air Graphics, see how they turn out when we do this process. We broke them down into these categories of reddish shadow. here are these trees, those are juniper trees, and the shadow effect on that, you can see already there's an issue. This is again using a supervised classification. Green is the tree itself, blues are shrubs, yellow is herbaceous understory, and cyan is the surface. I think it's light green. And you see that light green is what? I'm saying light green, I mean light blue is shrub, so these are shrub patches. And it's not exact, but it's really close to this. So we did an accuracy assessment, which you'll do again later on. And you're basically looking at the relationship between these, and overall, we found that our overall accuracy is about 91%. So you have to decide, is your ability to go and use a drone or a company to come fly it for you, is that accuracy of 91% with a cap statistic of 0.88, is that enough to justify using this over doing field-based measurements? But the reality is, even with field-based measurements, you're not going to be exact. You're going to miss stuff anyway. So we feel like for general vegetation classes of trees, shrubs, herbaceous surface, it's awesome.
What is the accuracy for field-based measurements? I guess what can you, does anybody ever kind of, I don't know how you would figure that out.
It's tough. It is really tough. That's why that paper that Matt Madsen did, I think it's really interesting, because it's showing what their data is and it's showing what our data is. And yeah, they're not exact. They're off a little bit, but not significantly. Statistically, they are the same. Statistically, but you start to wonder, well, the numbers aren't exact. So who's off? Which ones are off? And the reality is both are going to be off. So having an exact measurement of reality is the holy grail, right? That's what you'd be after, but to get it, it's really hard to get exact.
Because with a drone, at least you'd be consistent. Or would it be 3 different humans measuring in their own little ways? It'd just be the one.
I paid you ahead of time to say that's exactly right. If you get 5 people out doing this work and they're all different transect lines, you ever tried this before? I think you all have. If you're collecting any kind of vegetation data, you've all been there. Me and my dear friend are doing different lines, and we're done. I just assume, especially if you're estimating ocular estimations of cover. You ever done it before? Ocular estimations of cover. Then afterwards, I'll sit with my buddy, who I have full confidence in. We'll sit there and look at a plant. We always calibrate before we go out. Okay, what in this little area here? What do you estimate cover to be? Okay, is it your head? Yeah, I got a number. What's your number? 13.5. What's yours? 38.7. That happens all the time. I can't imagine how much data is in published material that is being collected on methods like that have results like that. They're just all over the place. And in my opinion, remote sensing stuff takes a lot of that out. But what don't you get? I'm not going to oversell remote sensing. I refuse to do this. What do you miss? What are you missing in remote sense data? Tom, you do so much of this now. What do you miss? I mean, what do you get? What do you miss?
Are you kind of talking about like just missing you're out there looking at the resource?
So one thing, when you're standing in the field,
Yeah.
versus never having been there, just looking at a picture, you can imagine really well what people. I get crazy when I hear people just doing the field or in the computer and never go out. It makes me crazy. So I'm like, man, you do not know what you're talking about unless you've seen it. To stand in a sagebrush system and look at sagebrush characteristics and the plants around and the soils, and to see if the soils are sandy or not or whatever. If you're not out there measuring this stuff, at least getting a sense for it, you're missing out. And I think it leads to bad data. Anything else missing? What about the stuff that's underneath? Your remote sensing, you're catching the surface, the top. What about underneath? Anything growing underneath ever? Like crazy. If you drop a pin in the field and it falls down, the first thing it hits is sagebrush, right? But if you keep tracking and going through, in some studies you'll do multiple hits. It gets through the sagebrush, it hits something again. What did it hit? A grass that's hiding in that plant that's hiding there because it doesn't want to get eaten by cows. Hits it. Again, what's below that? Anything? Litter. It's going to hit some litter. You might be measuring litter out here. We'll just hit litter in here too. You're not going to ever see that with your drone data. So there's also the things you don't see. It also is really hard to spectrally differentiate forbs. For me to say that is astragalus utahensis, and that right there, that's trifolium. They're little, the coloration is so similar in the leaves. Your ability to do that for remote sensed image like I just showed you, oh, no way. Sometimes your human eye right there identifying the traits, picking out the seeds and saying, oh, I know for a fact that's astragalus, and it's not the other one because of the seed you're not. So, depends on what information you want to have. You can really lose if you're not in the field collecting some of this data. But for a general assessment, or if you want to relate that or correlate it to things you're getting from your drone, some good stuff there to be had. This is April Hewlett's. I'm going to talk about this later because this is all OBIA stuff. This is object-based image analysis, and I want to talk about that later. But there's the publication. That right there is money. So awesome how you can pick out plants, differentiate the surfaces. And here's her work. She got really high accuracy on a lot of things and not so much on other things. Bare ground, a little bit tough. When you're comparing it to non-veg like litter, those can be a little bit difficult to separate out. And I'll talk to you later about producers and users accuracy. There's the Spire 2. This is, I'm showing you this, right? Did I show you this? This is all new to you? This is up Price Canyon. You go to the top of Price. There's a place called the campground. The Price Recreational Campground area. Right above it is the closest bristlecone pine forest we have around here. So these trees in here, over there's aspen. These are all ponderosa pine, a bunch of Doug fir, not a single bristlecone pine over there at all. You get on the other side of the slope where it's south facing. These are all very limestone-derived soils, and these are basically, it's a monoculture bristlecone pine, and extends all the way up through this hillside. It's really steep country. So what we did is we flew it. We flew this area with our Inspire 2. So you get a sense. Here's that aspen over here. Drop off over the side in this direction. And those little white targets are out there. We put ground control points out here so we could geo-rectify this and tighten up the quality of our map when we were done. Real specific location where those trees grow. It's based on edaphic properties. That's an edaphic succession situation. Edaphic meaning based on soils more than climate. There's climatic succession or edaphic. Edaphic means it's really about the soils that are there and the steepness and the rockiness that drives the existence of these bristlecone more than anything else. The temperature does have an effect too, so it's kind of a mix of both. The adaptive part of it's really huge. So here's Pix4D. This is the software that we use for processing these images. And this is now a little video clip of what that looks like. So we're zooming on that same slope we just showed you. And these are the trees of that hillside. And you gotta watch this. This to me is just mind-blowing. This is just from a drone flying overhead. See that tree right there? It's a little close to it. It starts to get a little pixelated right there. You can measure the height. You can measure the dimension, the canopy cover. You can measure the tapering effect of that tree, which really can tell you about biomass. If you want to do a fuel study, I don't know why you wouldn't fly drones over to do this. Just such a cool tool. And here are all the photographs that all got stitched together in Pix4D. We have licenses for Pix4D. If you ever want to go to your study site and fly a drone and come back and process it, I highly encourage you to use our drones. Come borrow my drones. Come use my software and do this. And when you're done, you've got this incredible three-dimensional perspective of the lay of the land. And from that, this is what you get. There's the same area. We were parked over here. So this is the road. The road's probably, what, 8 feet wide, 10 feet wide? And here are the individual trees out there. From that, you run that elevation grid. And so right here is the elevation of everything out there. So you're seeing the elevation of all your trees. If you want to go and have a classification where you're picking out trees, you know exactly their heights. Then you can remove the trees. You can take the trees off, and that leaves you with this, which is a surface model that's a millimeter resolution DEM of your site, where you're seeing every little ridge. That's a little rocky outcrop. Seriously, you can see the road itself. That's the elevation change of the road where they dug it out with the tractor back in the day. And here's a little tiny riparian or tributary that's coming off. So cool. We got infrared imagery from it that we can do this. And then today in lab, we're going to do this. We're going to run some vegetation indices based on the same concepts of classification. This is the next phase, the next step of this. So in lab today, I gotta let you go. I'm gonna just talk a little bit about indices first, so you have just a background and feel for what indices are. And then we're going to do a simple index. It shouldn't take the whole time. It just won't. But I also want to talk to you guys about your projects. So while we're doing this, I'm going to walk around and be asking you guys what you have in mind for what you're going to do for your project. Because in about 2 months, I want you to write this thing up, and I want you to have a chunk. It's a happy project that you feel good about. So give me some thoughts. It'll be a loose discussion. I want to hear your thoughts out so that I know where you're at with it, and if you need anything, if you need some data or whatever, we can discuss that. Last slide. I have 2 slides left. You can come up with a density measurement of all those trees. That's cool. You already saw that. And we just got this published yesterday. It got accepted. Have you ever seen what you can do in GIS? We'll talk to you later about ArcGIS, Arc Online. But here at the ghal.byu.edu, this is my website for our lab of geospatial. I haven't announced it up. Here's a spatial bibliography. You can click on Aspen Ecology, and it'll pull this Arc Online system up. And these right here are papers, and this is Ryan Howe's work. We did the papers published. It's from Ryan Howe's stuff. But you come in here, it's loading up. It's not ready yet. These little hot spots out here are papers. These are research papers that are published on Aspen. So you can click on it here, and it'll pull up the paper that was published right. That's where the work was done. It represents information data was collected right here. This was published in the year 2001. It's in the Journal of Chromatography. It's by Yellowstone National Park. You can click on this. It takes you right to the paper itself. And what a cool tool of using information you get, applying it spatially, and then having it be a method for accessing information like that. And Utah State's already got this in their library system. They're using it for people who are interested in Aspen. If you don't know anything about Aspen, you can sit there and scour the literature, or you can just pull up this map and say, oh, I want to know about what they're doing in Utah County. Click right there and I'll show you all the papers that have been published in Utah County. We've done that for horses and sage grouse and sagebrush. It's a cool little system. All right, everybody, you need to go. I can't hold you anymore. I will see you back in our lab.